Hey everyone, in my latest podcast, I sit down with the CEO of Mydecine Innovations Group's Josh Bartch, who talks about his big news last week involving his leading research compound trial that helps people quit smoking. Well, the trial received a $4 million government grant from the National Institute of Health. It's the first government-funded study towards a psychedelic compound in over 50 years. Wow, to say the least. How big is this? Find out now in our latest podcast. What's going on, bro? Hey everyone, this is the Dales Report. I'm happy to be joined back to the podcast in a few months, the CEO of Mydecine Innovations Group, Josh Bartch. How's it going, brother? It's been a few months, but how are things?
It's good. Obviously, all in perspective given the times, but it's good to be back. Good to talk.
It is. What do you think of this? And I start things off with a lot of questions with a lot of executives within this industry in the last couple of weeks. Just what do you make of this industry right now? It's been challenging times, to say the least. If this industry, again, was in the private sector, it would be Mardi Gras with all the progress that's being made. And let's face it, there's a lot of assets that I don't think really exemplify the true value as to what's going on. But cash runway and diversification is going to be key, obviously, for long-term growth for a lot of these companies. But how are you making, about all this whole industry right now and how much it's really changed, especially in the last 6 months?
I think we take obviously a long-term vision, right? So we kind of step back and look at it from an aerial view, as opposed to a short-term perspective, right? For a number of reasons. Obviously, when you're looking at the market more broadly, so we'll look at biotech more broadly.
Yes.
You're in an unprecedented market, whereas companies that are putting out phenomenal clinical trial results and even phenomenal sales results, if they already have commercialized drugs, are just getting crushed, right? So
I
for no
know.
apparent reason. And I think that obviously has scared the investor from all different investor profiles.
Agreed.
And they're really kind of stepping back and analyzing where is sure bets for markets and kind of jumping on the board of, other areas or other investments, specifically probably in commodities, right? Because those are rallying.
Yep.
So a lot of the money has been pulled out and a lot of it is sitting in the sidelines. I think now you have more cash sitting on the sidelines than probably in the last 20, 30 years, right? So that's going to change when, we don't know. But for us, you know what I mean? We've really looked at it as the market broadly in psychedelics obviously is still advancing at an incredibly rapid pace. Nothing has slowed down. There's been some small blips of negative news, some of the stuff coming out of MAPS, et cetera. But again, those are expected, right? That's expected, and that's nothing that has to do with the efficacy or the safety of the drug. That has to do with some of the irresponsible players in the space, which is going to happen in any industry and definitely any emerging industry. So that's unavoidable. But as far as the advancement of the research, advancement of new drugs, and the data that's coming out, nothing has changed.
Mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling, right? If anything,
know.
it's getting better. Academically speaking, you're seeing more and more and more and more high-level institutions and high-level researchers getting behind the movement, right? And getting behind the research and endorsing it. So
Are you finding that specifically for Mydecine?
I mean, I don't think it's just for Mydecine. I think it's really for anybody doing good research, right? And once you're starting to see the data is undeniable. The efficacy rates that are coming out of this is undeniable. The safety profile of the drugs are undeniably better than what's currently available in traditional. The dosing format and dosing regimens are, single or sometimes 2 or 3 doses, but this is not a redundant everyday drug that you're taking. The toxicity scares are significantly lower. All of the all of the indicators are moving towards positive outcomes for the industry, except for obviously the public markets. With that said, private companies in the space are still receiving significant investment, and
Mm-hmm.
valuations are not being hit nearly as hard. So, again, we see it as a temporary market environment, but as far as the overall progression of the development, we think that nothing has changed for the negative, but quite the contrary.
Well, you see the need, especially with a lot of government officials from various countries looking at the true importance of this industry. I know we talked about it for a while as to what will things look like once COVID's still very much around, but the peak COVID is probably behind us. Now that a lot of the government checks aren't being sent out to people, you're starting to see with the economy taking a turn for the worst. Really, mental health is starting to see the impact of what this pandemic has left behind over the last 2.5 years. I can't help but feel that we're getting a true understanding of what that is and the importance of the growth within your industry. How much do you think that's playing into a factor on the overall growth of the industry and how it's being fast forward? You think maybe a little bit quicker based on conversations that you're having?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's kind of two components there. And the importance, obviously, for new innovation in different mental health treatments and kind of changing that. Um, that goes without saying, right? We need innovation, and psychedelics obviously offer that. I think that you need to break it up into what we look at as kind of first generation frontline treatment and some of the
Mm-hmm.
problems that maybe will arise with the commercialization of, call it a Compass first generation treatment or a MAPS first generation treatment, and the need for continued innovation on those drugs from an affordability and accessibility standpoint. You know, it's absolutely true that there is a massive problem in one, the way that we're treating mental health, the attention that we're giving it, the available
Mm-hmm.
treatments. But two, there is a problem with some of the first generation drugs that are being developed in psychedelics. When those commercialize, it's going to be very hard for a lot of the people that are in need of the treatment to access those drugs
Mm-hmm.
because of the cost associated with it, right? You're talking about two practitioners that have to be with, a single patient for up to 8 hours for a single treatment.
So how do you
That's very
fix
hard to
that?
scale.
How do you fix that?
So, something that we focused on at Mydecine and is actually in our vision statement is that we see success in the psychedelic drug development business when the treatments are available in existing medical infrastructure, as opposed to the unique kind of infrastructure that's being developed for ketamine treatment or psychedelic treatments, et cetera, right? These psychedelic clinics, those are good, but we see them as a temporary fix. And if we want true success and true adoption to where you don't just treat, we use the analogy of an airplane, right? The first
Yeah.
generation of drugs that are
Yeah.
being developed right now, they can suit the first class. We want to suit the rest. We want to treat the rest of the coach class.
Right.
In order to do that, you need to refine the drug, and it needs to be adaptable and be able to fit into the existing mold and to be adopted by the existing, and general medical community. So the most important thing is you need to increase onset time. You need to control half-life. Those two things are incredibly important, and it's something that we've been heavily focusing on in our second generation of drug. The second thing that you need to look at is increasing and fixing some of the safety profiles. When you look at, for instance, some of the treatments that are being developed for microdosing or for psilocybin, psilocybin binds to 5-HT2B. You've
Right.
seen a lot of
Yep.
drugs
Yep.
in the past, being fen is one that's been pulled for heart valve issues. That's arisen from those drugs. So we focused on really modulating the binding affinity of those second generation of drugs to have very strong binding at 5-HT2A, but zero binding at 5-HT2B. So you need to address a number of these issues. With that said, we still see significant merit in the first generation of drugs, right? We see it as a vast improvement. For instance, our MYCO 001 is a first generation psychedelic that has 3 to 5x the efficacy rates of what's currently available for smoking cessation, with a
Hmm.
significantly improved safety profile and a significantly improved dosing regimen, right? A single dose. So, you couple all of those things together, then you try to find out how can we lower the cost of that, but how can we rapidly improve that drug? So we've taken the stance of creating a family of pro drugs that can have a fast track approval process once the first generation is drugged, but has, one, significant patent protection, and two, has improved characteristics. So our MYCO 004 product is exactly
Yeah.
that you can take advantage of kind of unique fast track um, approval processes.
Let's dive into some of your drug development and your lead compound, MYCO 001. Big news. I'm sure that was really good news last week. The FDA cleared your lead compound, MYCO 001, for smoking cessation, as you indicated. It's a recent investigational new drug application marking your company's first trial clearance. So this trial received $4 million in grant from the National Institutes of Health, otherwise known as the NIH, excuse me. And it's the first direct government-funded study evaluating psychedelic compound in 50 years.
Yeah.
Break it down for us. How significant is this announcement and what it means for the company?
Sure. So it's really important to kind of step back and give credit where credit's due on this study, because I don't want there to be confusion here. So this study is run and led by the team at Hopkins in conjunction with the team at NYU and University of Alabama, Birmingham. So it's not a
Okay.
Mydecine study. It is using Mydecine's drug. So we're
Okay.
supplying MYCO 001 as well as the placebo, which is being used, which is niacin. So Mydecine lended all of, obviously, the IND information for the drug. So all of the IND that was filed is Mydecine's content of their drug product, so our MYCO 001 product. We manufacture the drug, we're supplying the drug, et cetera, and all of the safety and efficacy data will be coming back to Mydecine and be supportive of our trial and our eventual submission. In addition to that, we're also manufacturing and supplying the niacin placebo. It's also the identical drug that's being used in our phase 2B study,
Okay.
which is an industry-sponsored study. So there's two kind of differences in the study. One, this was a continuation of the ongoing studies that are being done out of Hopkins. So the initial 15-person pilot study, and then the current underway 100 patient study looking at a single macrodose of psilocybin against the nicotine replacement therapy, so nicotine patch. That's really what got us excited. That's what made us want to
Hmm.
partner with Matt and the Hopkins team. When that study was ongoing, Matt and his team applied for a NIDA grant to continue their study. Again, continue it from an academic standpoint. So it's not a commercializable study. So obviously we saw that, one, as an incredible opportunity for us to step in and look at how do we take this out of academia into an industry-sponsored study that can be commercialized,
Right.
but at the same time support that ongoing research. So when we first got involved, we didn't know if NIDA was going to grant him the money or grant him, give him the grant for that study. They eventually got it. It's also important to note that that study, his NIDA grant application, came back with an incredibly high score, and NIDA is
Hmm.
incredibly supportive of the research. And like you said, it's the first time that the federal government has supplied
Yeah.
funding for a psychedelic
Yeah.
compound for a therapeutic use in 50 years. And it's based off the efficacy rates coming out of the smoking cessation study. So we're supporting
Very
the study in the
interesting.
sense that we're supplying the drug. What it means for the company is a couple things. One, this is the first time that our drug and our IND has gone before the FDA for an approval to actually go into humans, and it was approved. So this is incredibly positive for the likelihood of our phase 2B IND that'll be submitted in July. We believe
Hmm.
that will be approved. The phase 2B study is a Mydecine sponsored study, also led by Dr. Matt Johnson out of Hopkins, with several other sites throughout the United States. There's 8 sites throughout the United States that obviously we're incredibly excited about. That study is something that we've talked about a lot, and is something that we believe we have a very high likelihood of success on, because it's based off undeniable results that have come out
Wow.
with our drug, the exact same team, exact same treatment regimen that we're
Right.
undergoing. So we'll be submitting next month both the IND as well as the breakthrough therapy status application, which we think that we have a very high likelihood of receiving as well. And then that study will progress into the phase 2B portion. Something that's significant about that study that we like to highlight is it's very unique in the indication as it pertains to other indications that have, that psychedelics have been looking at, whereas you can find large patient populations of traditionally healthy normals that are smokers, right? This is a unique
Yeah.
addiction that's not like alcohol, unlike cocaine addiction, unlike opioid, et cetera, whereas those have significant comorbidities associated with them, as well as significant ramifications on an individual's livelihood, right? The vast majority of the
Right.
people that are suffering
100%.
from cocaine addiction or alcohol addiction or methamphetamine or these other addictions, their life is in shambles, right? They're not living normal
Yeah.
lives. In
Yeah.
smoking, in the smoking population, these people are living normal lives. It's something that we've talked about a lot, just how bizarre it is that smoking is by far the most deadly of all substances combined, right?
Because
480,000 people in the United
you're right.
States
For
dying
that reason that you
annually.
just outlined, right?
Absolutely. But when you go to an addiction center, you walk outside and everybody's smoking, right?
I know.
It's just bizarre to us that it's not thrown into all these other substances that people
I know.
are focusing on finding treatments for. When you look at the efficacy rates of what's currently available on the market for smoking cessation, when you have a market projected to be $64 billion in smoking cessation products by 2026, you have Chantix, recalled globally for a
Mhm.
cancer-causing carcinogen as a
Mhm.
drug, doing $1.2 billion a year in sales with 12-month efficacy rates in the single digits. You know what I mean? It's
Wow.
not effective. We're showing a single
Change.
macrodose at about 60% biologically verified abstinence from smoking. So it's completely different.
So you
It's
think
game
s- you
changing, and
think s-
obviously something that we're excited.
so you think you expect psilocybin to be both effective for smoking cessation and as well feasible for if and when it enters the consumer smoking cessation market? Is that what I'm understanding?
So I think that it's going to be a prescribable drug always. We don't see any sort of over-the-counter product with psilocybin or any psychedelics for that matter. It needs to be done in the right set and setting by trained professionals. But I do believe that you know psilocybin and our MYCO 001 product, by far it offers for sure the safest drug out there that treats this, and by far what we're showing, it's not even in the same ball game from an efficacy standpoint, and the durability of the treatment
Mhm.
is completely different as well, right? You're looking at something, and this is for addiction more broadly.
Yeah.
Our treatment has a curative profile. This is something that, if you look at the pilot study that came out of Hopkins, at 2.5 years, 60% of that population were biologically verified abstinent from smoking, right? All of the other treatments for addiction right now are to suppress appetite. I mean, to
Mhm.
suppress
Mhm.
craving, right? So this is not something that they're looking at. How do we actually fundamentally change the perception of how one looks at this substance as a need or doesn't need it anymore, right? We're actually eliminating eliminating the addiction as opposed to suppressing cravings.
Hmm. Let's focus now. Business operations. In addition to this announcement concerning the government and the funding, you also provided a corporate update, and one of the main highlights was the substantial decrease in burn rate, which obviously is part of the course for any drug development company, especially in the early days of this industry. Um, so how far can the $4.5 million, I guess, in the balance sheet cash take you, I guess, in your clinical trial programs before, let's say, additional capital is required?
Sure. So a couple of things. We'll step back again and kind of look at the progression of our company and correlate that with the market. So when we came out, a new company over 2 years ago, we came out hot and fast. The markets were ripping and
Yep.
roaring, and obviously capital was free flowing. We cast a very wide net and had a ton of initiatives that we wanted to um, that we wanted to tackle and that were interesting, and we saw a lot of merit in those. As the company has progressed and the markets have changed, we've been forced to refine that vision as to what are we focused on, and what do we do with some of the other initiatives. So we'll start with MindLeap. MindLeap is something that we've spent a lot of time. We built a world-class platform that we're incredibly proud of. However, we think that MindLeap is probably more suitable in either a technology-focused telehealth company that can continue to provide the resources, the development, and the team to continue to bring that to the next level,
Yep.
and or a clinic style company that has a network of clinics that can use MindLeap now as a tool, and again, focus on continuing to develop it, provide the necessary resources for that. So what we've done is we've decided to sell MindLeap to a more suitable company. This does a couple things. One, it cuts significant burn rate from the company because we were obviously spending a lot of money developing that platform, and we were a ways away before it produced meaningful income for the company, and it obviously would require significant additional investment to do that. With that being said, MindLeap is a world-class platform we built from scratch. We own all the IP own all the code. It's incredibly modular, and it's, I think, miles beyond anything else from the technology standpoint that's been developed in the space. So we've been taking term sheets for that. We'll talk more about that publicly here in the near term, but that should add additional capital to the balance sheet, as well as obviously alleviate some of the additional cash burn. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars a month that saves us as well. In addition to that, we've consolidated our research footprint to be strictly out of the University of Alberta. So we've decided to close the Colorado lab, as well as monetize a lot of the equipment that was there. This does not affect our drug development operations at all. And we were able to take a couple things. One, the work in progress and the research being done predominantly on the functional mushroom side of things and the compounds within out of the Colorado lab, and move that up to the University of Alberta. That also expands our opportunities to incorporate the AI technology, to expand on some of the unique compounds found in cordyceps, reishi, et cetera, and really come up with true NCEs kind of in that field, something that hasn't had a lot of innovation, but we think has a lot of potential. But consolidating all that research under one roof significantly improves our efficiencies and also cuts additional unnecessary burn as well. Well as we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment here that is being sold to add cash to the balance sheet as well. So what we've really done is refined our focus to be a true biotech play. And we've done that by, again, cutting cost and then hyper-focusing on really two things. One is obviously our smoking cessation trial, and then two is continuing to expand on what we've built and we think is one of the best, if not the best, drug development engines in the psychedelic space. And more broadly, we have a world-class drug development unit out of the University of Alberta that we built. So we
Right.
spent a significant amount of money building out that infrastructure there, building upon the already existing world-class infrastructure that they have there, but also building out our AI drug development platform with Dr. Khalid Barakash's lab, top 3 in the world for drug development, for AI drug development, Nobel laureate for their cancer work that they did with their AI engine. It's the largest supercomputing computer in all of Canada, so it's not something that we're just doing on a household desktop, right? This is a world-class engine that we're utilizing, that coupled with Dr. Denton Hoyer's expertise kind of acting as a feedback loop. So we've developed several libraries of second-generation novel NCEs that we feel are, again, adaptable and moldable to existing infrastructure. We've built them on a platform that's incredibly modular that we can license out individual assets. And we're currently in discussions with several companies to have them step in that are much larger companies, to have them step in, license specific assets, and provide the funding that's necessary to take those out of the benchtop into the actual clinic, which we think is an incredible hedge on the long-term success of the company.
When I look at how you're parting ways with some of these assets, was this something that you felt like you were going to do even before the market or even the industry started to downsize a little bit? Like, was this something that had crossed the mind, or was a lot of it just because of the nature of the industry or the nature of the markets that we're in right now?
I think both. I think, like any startup, many instances you start up and you have a wide net and you have a lot of goals and
You learn as you go.
ambitions. You learn as you go, and obviously there's no blueprint for this industry, right? It's that's one of the correlations that I see between this and the cannabis industry. There is blueprint for drug development, but as far as how this is going to pan out, what's going to work, et cetera, we're kind of writing the book as it goes along. And a lot of that is learning from mistakes, learning from progress, and then ultimately looking at what is going to bring the most shareholder value, and how can we operate the company that we're ensuring being able to survive through good times, bad times, and everything in between. And that's really what we've focused on. I think that we've done an excellent job. Something else that is a testament to the commitment of the team. Every single C-suite member has agreed to defer 100% of their salary until we're in a better financial situation. So that's something that obviously should show the shareholders that we're committed, that everybody's committed, and that we believe in what we're doing.
So long-term strategy to have this industry, or they should say this company, survive, get to the next level. This announcement last week, obviously with the government funding, what is the strategy, I guess, over the next 6 to 12 months? That if you're sitting in front of a group of investors, as to why it makes sense to obviously still invest in the company, and even for new investors, why it's a wise investment decision to be associated with the company. What is the long-term 12-month strategy, if you could kind of share with my viewers?
Sure. So we'll break it into like 3, 6, and 12 months if that works. So we'll start with 3 months. 3 months, we think that we'll have several very, very material announcements. So one of which is the submission and the approval of our 2B IND. That will put us in a group of a handful of companies in the psychedelics arenas that has a phase 2B study and or later stage. That would include, obviously, MindMed, Compass, Atai could be grouped in there, and then MAPS. We don't know what the valuation of MAPS is, but we can benchmark our valuation against MindMed and Compass.
Right.
And even after the significant retraction that they've, pulled 80% or whatever it might be, there's still several $100 million market caps, right? And we're sitting at $10 million Canadian. So, for us, the approval of that IND, we think, should significantly improve the overall value of the company and really make that study a reality. In addition to that, we believe that there's a very high likelihood in the next 90 days that we'll receive breakthrough therapy status. In the U.S., we've also submitted a application for an innovation passport in the U.K., which is essentially the analogous fast track to breakthrough in the U.S. So we believe that we'll receive approval on that in the very near term as well. Outside of that, there's several irons on the fire for partnerships to step in and again look at licensing opportunity or joint venture opportunities on the NCE program. So we believe that we'll be able to talk more about that, and then obviously the sale of MindLeap. So that's the short term. In the moderate term, so 6 to 12 months, we'll go from 6 to 12 months. We believe that in the next 12 months, we'll obviously be done with our phase 2B portion of the study and already be underway in our phase 3. Something that was unique about our meeting with the FDA on February 28th for our pre-IND meeting, which caused a little bit of delays, but overall we think is incredibly positive. Initially, we had a study design for a seamless phase 2/3 study, which is a unique study design, but it also carries inherent risk in the sense that there is no pause in between. So whatever you start with in phase 2, if it doesn't work and you're going all the way through phase 3, there's no chance to go and have a meeting with the FDA, make revisions to the overall study design, et cetera. So what the FDA gave us guidance and suggestions on were a couple things. One is that we separate our study to have a phase 2B and a 3, that we power up the number of patients based on a formula that was developed by Ethica CRO, our internal team, and then the Weinberg Group, which is our FDA consultancy, that is based on a number of factors that kicks out how many patients we should include in the phase 2B to have that qualify as a pivotal study.
Okay.
And the FDA gave a strong indication that if we did power that up, which we did to 118 patients, that study, if the efficacy rates come out similar to what we're showing in the ongoing studies, that would be considered a pivotal study. So that's obviously very significant because we'd theoretically only have to conduct a single phase 3 if that phase 2B portion is successfully considered a pivotal study. In addition to that, we had a initial study design that had a non-active placebo. The FDA suggested that we went to an active placebo, which we have chosen to go with niacin. Again, the identical placebo that's being used in the NIDA study. So we had additional manufacturing time because it has to go through full GMP manufacturing. The look of the niacin placebo needs to be identical to our 5 milligram capsules that we have developed for our MYCO 001 products. So we had to have additional manufacturing time associated with that. It has to sit on stability for a set amount of time in order to meet all the requirements to go into humans, even though it's a known substance. So a couple delays, but ultimately we see as a significant positive for the overall study. So we believe that we'll be completing the phase 2B, publishing those results, which we believe should be incredibly positive, and moving into the phase 3. In addition to that, one of our lead NCE candidates will be in phase 1, we believe, by that time as well, our MYCO 004, and potentially also one of our second generation MDMA compounds, which we've significantly shortened the half-life on and obviously made significant improvements on that as well. So a lot of movement over the next 12 months for Mydecine.
So lots of confidence and vision as to what will be implemented on growth trajectory then for investors to really understand about what's going to happen in the short term and long term was what I'm gathering, correct?
Absolutely.
Well, listen, I appreciate the update. Congrats, obviously, on the news last week. No, it's going to be probably a busy time. Let's just hang in there, obviously, for this industry. And, at the end of the day, I think once this does turn for the better, aren't these unbelievable entry points for people to buy in at? Like, as much as you block out all this chaos, it's crazy to think if somebody wants to dip their toes back into the market and to think of the entry points they could get in at. I look at things a little bit differently. I know a lot of people are putting stuff into cash right now, and we could see maybe another drop of 10 to 15%. But even at this case, it's incredible to see some of the entry points that people could get in at right now.
Yeah, I mean, for me as well, from an individual investment standpoint, timing the industry, I don't think you need to focus on timing. I think that there's already been a downturn that is so significant that any entry point on a company that you think has a high likelihood of success long term is incredibly solid right now. You're seeing, I mean, and this unfortunately, more broadly, this is where you see a large transfer of wealth because people get scared and they step out, and people with large cash positions are accumulating stock on these downturns at ridiculous prices. So the upside potential there is astronomical, and things that you won't probably see in your lifetime again. So take advantage of it.
Yeah. Mydecine trades in the New York Exchange under the ticker symbol MYCO. Josh Bartch, I appreciate you checking in. All right,
Likewise.
take
Good to
care.
talk to
Keep
you.
in touch. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. And if you like this video, wait until you see what we have next. Some of the best thought leaders in the verticals that we cover, from cannabis and psychedelics to cryptos and NFTs and sports wagering. So if you want to learn more, make sure to click on that bell for all notifications. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.